Sometimes it's nice just to listen to the bell. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are tuning in. Thank you so much for joining me today for my next installment of our Timothy Snyder book study slash process group. And we are on chapter 9, if I'm not mistaken. I took last week off because I was traveling, but happy to be back here. Yeah, we had a nice, rich discussion, really talking. Well, we talked about the chapter, which I'll play the Timothy Snyder's summary in a moment. But we kind of landed really doing a sort of a victory lap, if you will, around the protests that took place over the weekend. 7 million plus people, 7 million, at least 7 million in the States, 7 million people in Japan, which is the size of California. So that's quite extraordinary to see a foreign country protesting with those sorts of numbers. Um, England, France, too, there were large protests in London and Paris and so forth, and many other places in those countries, too. So this is really becoming a worldwide movement, and a worldwide anti-MAGA movement. And how wonderful that people are uniting across the globe in support of democracy. So that's inspiring. And so I'll go ahead and play the video here. It's a short video. I think this one's about 6 minutes. And the chapter is quite short too. If you had a chance to read the chapter, um, you may have noticed that. Yeah, but I'll let Timothy say more.
To say so. We've reached lesson 9, and lesson 9 is be kind to our language. I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to say something about how the reaction to the book is relevant to this lesson, and then I'm going to move into how we can continue to be kind to our language in the years to come. So be kind to our language. Avoid pronouncing the phrases everyone else does. Think up your own way of speaking, even if only to convey the thing you think everyone is saying. Make an effort to separate yourself from the internet. Read books. So, from my own little selfish corner of our media space, I notice something every day, which is that I can really tell the difference between people who write me because of something they've been triggered by on the internet, and people who write me because they've read a book, my book, or someone else's book. The mode, the mood, the time taken, everything is different. Like, I don't even have to think about it. People don't say, I was triggered by this on the internet, but you can tell right away. You can tell because they use the same words that all the other people triggered by that same thing on the internet were using. And sadly, it's very often the very words that they were triggered by, which they are simply repeating. And this is a prospect which frankly terrifies me, right? It's not that I mind being criticized or, that's not the point. The point is that when we as a species, right, when we as humans are narrowed down to repeaters of memes, which have found us because of algorithms on the internet, we are in deep trouble. Right? If the definition of who we are becomes repeaters of algorithmically targeted memes, that's not just a bad way to live. It's not a possible way to support anything like a democracy, because democracy depends upon us having some sense of time beyond our immediate outrage. It involves us having some way of expressing ourselves besides the words that travel through us from the internet and towards other people. Now, I don't want to idealize books, certainly not my books, but it is clearly the case that when people are at the end of reading a book, They have in some way been changed, in some way been enriched, something has been added to them. I tend to think about this in terms of unpredictability, right? Whereas time on the internet sorts you out, um, wears off your rough patches, makes you more like other people in the little group you've been categorized in. Reading makes you less predictable. Reading takes what you have, it adds something to it in an unpredictable way. You don't know what you would write to someone after you've read a book. You can't anticipate it, right? Whereas I can anticipate what you're going to write after you see something on the internet. And that unpredictability is really essential. And that question of, so the question becomes, how do you become unpredictable? And the answer is simple, right? The internet is not only predictable, it predictifies. I think I made that word up. If I didn't, someone will correct me. The internet predictifies. It makes you more predictable. Whereas a library shelf, simple solution, right? I'm in a library. If I turn around and I look at a shelf of books, I'm going to find one that I haven't read. And if I read it, it's going to add something unpredictably to me. But the library shelf itself, just looking at a library shelf and picking something out, is a way of realizing how much richness and variety and unpredictability there is in the world. The internet just doesn't do that for us. And it doesn't do that, and this is the point of this lesson, it doesn't do that for our language. The internet, in a way which strikingly reminds me of George Orwell's 1984, the internet basically has made automatic the process which Orwell talked about in 1984. In 1984, people in the novel, people are working to make the language ever smaller, but it's a human effort, right? And as usual, reality has done science fiction one better. In our reality, it's the social media which are narrowing down the words that you hear, or rather read, if reading's the words to which you're exposed, to the ones that are most likely to trigger you, most likely to make you outraged or happy, right? Because it's that alternation of outrage and contentment, or complacency, really. Outrage, complacency. It's that mixture of feelings which keeps your eyes peeled on the screen. So the internet narrows down to the words which are going to trigger you or make you feel like you're right. And so as the language is impoverished, your thought is impoverished as well. We don't only think in words, but the more words we have, the more unpredictable we are to ourselves, the more possible reactions we can have. So be kind to our language means something very simple. It means spending less time on the internet. It means not being triggered by the internet. Like if you have to be on the internet, try not to be its agent, not spread its memes out to other human beings. If you're in touch with another human being, make sure that you've paused and cleansed and you say something human to that person rather than something which is flowing through you because of the algorithms you've just been exposed to. But more fundamentally, this is why it's such an easy lesson. Just read books. Just read books. It makes us feel better. It prepares us for the difficult political realities around us in a way which, at least hopefully, doesn't feel like too much work. So we can all be kind to the language. That was lesson 9. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so I like this chapter. It's lovely. It's upbeat. It's yeah, it's a lot of, I don't know, it just felt quite wholesome to me. And right, good timing too, because after this, the intensity of this weekend with the protest and everything, I'm feeling very kind of heavy and weighted and exhausted in a sense. So yeah, we talked some about that too, and the emotional rebound that many of us are might be on. I know that I'm on around a weekend like that, around a protest of that size. We did talk about the books that we're currently reading. I'm reading a lot of stuff like this on tyranny, of course, but that's each chapter is like 2 or 3 pages. So I read through that a couple of times a week. And I'm reading Jason Stanley's, I'm rereading How Fascism Works by Jason Stanley. I strongly recommend this book. If you really want to get a sense of what's happening in America, Jason Stanley, he's got tons of videos on YouTube. They're all really wonderful. If we're connected on Facebook, you'll see me posting stuff from Jason Stanley there. So I'm reading How Fascism Works. His book, Erasing History, is equally relevant and stunning. So I strongly recommend those two. Yeah, Timothy left a couple of book recommendations there too. He mentioned 1984 and was referring to it. I'm also going through 1984 very slowly at this point. It's a great accompaniment with Jason Stanley's work and Timothy Snyder's work. So yeah, I last time I read 1984, I was in high school. So it's and the world was so different back then, and I was young. Had I known, I can't believe that we let Ronald Reagan um, do that, the Citizens First, I think it's called Citizens First Act, where he lifted the ceiling on the amount of money that people could donate to a political movement. And you know, that's that was the seeds for where we are now. So we should have known. If I was old enough back then, I wish I had known. There you have it. So yeah, we kicked that around a little bit, and yeah, that's really about it. I encourage you. Oh, also we talked a little bit about of course, I don't, maybe some of you saw this. There's a huge list of words that the Trump administration has outlawed. It would happen on the first week of his presidency. And so you can Google that. Rolling Stone, I think, published a whole 2 or 3 pages. It's, quite extraordinary. I'm still using a lot of those words. I don't care. Trauma was on there. Like, I guess we're all healed from our trauma now. Women, the word woman was there. There's so many. But if you take a look at that list, that's going to kind of tell you the intentions that this administration has. So, it's very common when, back in colonial days, when a country would invade another country, they would, mandate that the country that was invaded start to speak their language. Even when America was first forming, when the colonists came over from Europe, it was very adamant that they learn English, right? Because that was going to be the language of America, right? I remember my grandfather, who was Polish, he would say things like, in this house we speak English. We don't speak because my grandmother was Italian and my mom could speak some Italian. And so they would, only speak English in the house, right? That kind of thing. We live in America. We speak English here. So what this does is essentially it erases a culture, right? Because our language, our culture travels through the society on language. So when China invaded Tibet, for example, and outlawed the Tibetan language, that was so that they could indoctrinate that Tibetan culture into Chinese culture. And same with Taiwanese, right? Taiwanese, there's a spoken language of Taiwanese, but there's no written language. And the idea is to suppress that language so it can more easily assimilate to Chinese. And so there's and again, 1984, it's such a wonderful example, right, of how they, the government, the leader of the country in 1984, they would publish a dictionary yearly with less and less words, right? So the less vocabulary we have, the less freedom we have because we become limited in the ways that we can think. So, yeah, reading can be so helpful. I do audiobooks. I have dyslexia, so reading is a bit challenging for me. I do read too. Some books aren't available on audiobooks, like the Black Reconstruction, Du Bois classic. I just picked up, I read it a long time ago as well in high school, but I wanted to read through that as well. Jason Stanley recommends that one. So that's about all we've got for today. I thought we would do a little bit of a practice as a way of kind of landing. So we do tapping. This is one way of doing tapping. It's called EFS, I think, if I'm not emotional freedom, EFT, emotional freedom technique. And so we're basically just tapping a series of acupuncture points or acupressure points. And these are said to be able to help us to find a sense of stillness or calm, can be quite soothing. And so the pressure of the tap, it doesn't have to be too hard. You don't want to hurt yourself, but it also doesn't, you don't want it to be too soft. You want to be able to feel the impact into the flesh. So I'm going to start here tapping at the top of the head. And today I'll just use one hand. You can use one or two. Right at the center line there. There's an acupuncture point there. That can feel quite nice. Then we go down to the eyebrows and just tapping on the eyebrows. The corner of the eyes. And the little soft patch right underneath the eyes. I have to do quite gentle there. Don't hurt yourself. Then we go in between the nose and the upper lip, where my newly formed mustache is hanging out. Then we go to the crease in between the lower lip and the chin. Then I like to cross the hands here and tapping the collarbones. Actually, it's like a bit of a soft patch right underneath the collarbones. And then doing the alternating tapping stimulates the two sides of the brain. So we end up processing our emotions in a little bit of a faster and smoother way. Then we can go to the karate chop side of the pinky finger there. Ah, yeah. And go to the other hand. So I'm starting to feel a little bit of relaxation coming in here. My leg muscles just softened a bit. It's quite nice. And we can go back to the top of the head. And you may or may not be noticing any physiological responses to the tapping just yet. I find that the more I do these practices, the more receptive my nervous system is to them. And go to the eyebrows. In a sense, the body kind of wakes up to the practice. To the corner of the eyes where my crow's feet are hanging out. Underneath the eyes. And the upper lip, right in between the upper lip and the nose. And the lower lip, right in between the lower lip and the chin. Going to the collarbones, doing the bilateral tapping here, just underneath the collarbones. And it doesn't matter what pace you go. If you want to go slower, that's also fine. Maybe I'll slow down a little bit. That's nice. And then we can go to the karate chop side of the pinky finger. And the other side. Let's do one more round. You may or may not be feeling that. And by the way, this is only an invitation. There's no obligation. If you're not feeling it at all, you can stop the video here, come back to it later if you like. So going to the eyebrows, corner of the eye, right underneath the eye, in between the nose and the upper lip, the crease on the chin between the lower lip and the chin, collarbones, karate chop side of the pinky, and the other side. And that's it. So thank you for that. Hope that's helpful. Thanks for being here once again, everyone. Stay safe, stay informed. If you're not, yeah, checking out Heather Cox Richardson's work. She does a Facebook Live or YouTube Live twice a week and has lots of videos there too. She's wonderful. Another person to check out. Um, and hope to see you all next time, next week, same time. Bye.